hopefully everyone's enjoying their lunch. It's Southern in your eating, courtesy once again of Bloomberg Law. I think maybe Mike stepped out of the room, and that's fine. I know on the agenda that I have that we're going to do the prize drawing now during lunch, but we're actually going to wait till the end to do that. So you guys have to sit around for one last thing. I don't think you're going to have a hard time staying in your seats, though, because we do have a real treat. We have three distinguished panelists that we're welcoming really back to WNL Law. We have two alums, and we also have someone who is very familiar to those of us in the room. I guess like most of you guys are one else, so you wouldn't recognize her. But Tanishka Cruz in the middle there was our Nexus rep for several years. So we welcome all of them back. The format today is going to be about an hour-long discussion. If as the time goes, we'll see. I'm going to introduce each of them briefly to you. You'll understand exactly why we're so honored to have them today. And then each one of them will give a little talk, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, whatever, however they see fit, about their experience with legal research in their professional work. They have a range of work experience, and I know that I'm sure there's going to be something each one of them is going to say that's going to resonate with each of you. So they'll speak a little bit, then we'll open up the floor to either questions. I have some discussion questions too that kind of provided those to them in advance. Maybe they want to speak to those. I can chime in. You guys can chime in. But we're going to have an interactive discussion for it in the end. So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce them. I'll introduce them in the order in which they're seating. So Claire Hagan is an associate in the Richmond office of McGuire Woods. After graduating magna cum laude from WNL Law in 2013, she took on 2 federal clerkships, first with the U.S. District Court of the Western District of Pennsylvania, and then with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 4th Circuit. And during law school, Claire was a summer associate with Alston & Bird. She was a member of the Washington Elite Law Review and received awards for outstanding note and brief writing and for oral advocacy. Prior to law school, Ms. Hagan was a clinical social worker at Johns Hopkins Hospital and at the University of Michigan, where she earned a Master's of Social Work in 2006. She also holds a Bachelor's of Arts in History and American Studies from Notre Dame. And of course, she's the wife of our very own friend and teacher and librarian and colleague, John Eller. And seated next to her is Tanishka Cruz. Ms. Cruz is a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Justice Center in Charlottesville, where she practices in the Immigrant Advocacy Program and coordinates the center's Special Immigrant Juvenile Project. And she was previously an account executive for 3 years with LexisNexis, and as I mentioned, one of her academic accounts was with us here at WNL. She is a 2012 graduate of Drexel University School of Law, and during and after law school, she gained experience as a law clerk and intern with a Pennsylvania state judge and 2 firms in the Philadelphia area. Ms. Cruz also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism, Public Relations, and Advertising from Temple University. And last, another familiar face to us, Donovan Eason. Mr. Eason is a law clerk for the 25th Judicial Circuit of Virginia, based in Stanton, where he has worked for 3 circuit judges. I think that's right. Three judges right now, right up the road in Stanton, since graduating cum laude from WNL last spring. In law school, he was the chair of the Moot Court Executive Board, a Birch Scholar, and among many other activities and roles, he was a Bloomberg Law student rep. He has, by the way, this is the 3rd in a row of these spring preparative practice sessions he's been in one capacity or another, so we're really happy to have him back, and he's still in the neighborhood and could make it. He worked as a summer clerk to a Georgia State judge and as a summer associate focusing on workers' comp issues cases during law school. He graduated magna cum laude from the University of Georgia. He has served as a policy advisor in the Georgia General Assembly and on the Lieutenant Governor's staff and campaign and transition teams. He was also a director of development for the Mercer University School of Medicine, where he focused on fundraising and lobbying efforts. So our very distinguished panel, please help me in welcoming them. And Ms. Hagan, I'll ask you to begin with a few comments, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right, wonderful.
Just about research in general?
Or? Sure, yeah. Or any of the questions that were discussed, or your experience, or kind of how anything that would enlighten the students about what they expect this summer, because you've had a lot of experience. We have a lot of people who are working for judges this summer, people on large firms, small firms, government agencies. So just really runs the gamut, yeah.
So hi everyone. I'm impressed that you guys are all here learning about research on a Saturday morning. I think that's really terrific. So I guess I'm not sure. I'm sure you guys learned a lot this morning about how to approach research and all of that. I guess what I would want to most contribute would be the differences that I found between where I've worked and the type of research, because it really has been very different in terms of what sources I'm looking at, the extent and how deep you go into your research and all of that. And I think the biggest difference is whether it's in the clerking for a judge or working in a law firm. In a law firm, like when I was a summer and now, there's a lot of research that it's not trying to figure out what the law is or, how to develop a new claim. A lot of it is more factual research. So like in my job now, I do a lot of just Googling searches or trying to figure out who is this company, who is it owned by, what do they do, that type of thing. So it's a lot of research that has legal implications, but it's not looking at cases. That's probably the thing I do the least now is looking up case law. But in contrast, if you're working for a judge, the most important thing that you need to do is make sure that you get the law right. And so by definition, you have to be incredibly thorough in looking at all the different all the different authorities and what might sway your judge and everything. And so it's a lot more case law, reading what different judges did, getting into their reasoning. It's a lot more thorough. So that's just a little bit, I don't know. But I'll pass it off there.
Hey everyone. So I love seeing familiar faces in a crowd. That always makes me feel like it's a happy place. I wanted to kick it off by I looked at the questions quickly, and I will tell you a little brief story about one of my first experiences at one of the law firms that Andrew had mentioned. I wanted to make a good impression from the start, and that's what I would really recommend that you all do. With every internship that you take, just know that you're building your own little network. So I always wanted to hit the ground running, always eager, and wanted to produce good work. I got an assignment from a partner early on, and he gave me a deadline, and I wanted to meet it and have it ready for him. He was out for lunch, and I knew he was going to come back and want to pick up the bench memo to present to a judge that afternoon, along with the case law that I was citing. So I was busy printing all of this stuff out, and anybody that knows me knows I'm a total klutz. So the printer shuts down and wants toner. I'm like, I got this, I could do this is no problem. So I grab the toner and I rip it open, and black ink or whatever is inside of it goes everywhere. All over the printer, all over me, all over the partner's gym bag and his white sneakers. It's like, so I'm freaking out, but I'm like, I have to get this memo and all this stuff done, and then I'll deal with this mess. So I did that, got it, but the worst part about it all is that as I'm scrubbing his sneakers, he's walking in the door, right? And he's just love the dedication, but it was really weird, but at the end of the day, he got the memo, it was in good shape, it was, high quality, and it was good enough to hand up to the judge. And that's what you want to, even though you'll have these funny little missteps here and there, probably not as embarrassing as that, I hope. But if you can get a reputation as being the go-to intern or the go-to person, it will follow you throughout your career. These are, partners and judges and, people that I'm relying on with every job in the future that I want to get as references. And something that I always really appreciate is that I know that if I ever, that they'll tell the people who are calling, if I had a job and if she wanted it, she'd have it. So, I think you want to make sure that you approach everything as not just for this summer or the first job out of law school, but how these connections will follow you and how that reputation will follow. Something that isn't necessarily intuitive, but this summer or moving forward, wherever you go, just have a little notepad and a pen with you, ready. Because you never know when you're going to get that assignment, and you want to jot down as much information as possible. Don't be afraid to ask questions, I would say. I know a lot of us want to give the, the partner the feeling that, or the judge or whoever, that you know but it's okay to ask for some clarifying questions. I actually am impressed when, an intern will come back and say, before I start this, I want to know, is this the approach you want me to take, or is this? And be clear about things like that. Ask, when do you need this by, so that you can prioritize your work. But don't go overboard in the sense of, it's a fine line for asking questions. If it's something that you should be able to figure out on your own, to pick up a secondary resource and get the basics, do that, and then go back and ask clarifying questions. So it's a balance, but definitely I would try to, strike it if you can. And I would say whatever you're doing next summer, get familiar with the court system that you're going to be working in, whether it's state, federal, administrative, whatever it might be. Get familiar with their site, the forms that are on the site. Something that I never expected. I had gone through first year of law school. Like, I have all this great information. I know how to use Lexis. I know how to use Westlaw. I know how to use this stuff. But then the first assignment I get is, can you pull the dockets for these 20 cases? What's a docket? Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know where to find this. How do you docket? What is this? So all of those things, if you can hit the ground running with that information, definitely do. Pacer's another thing that I didn't really play around with at all my 1L year, but my first summer out was huge. So things like that you can do before you go out this summer, get a handle on it. There's also, I think a lot to be said about getting familiar with the area of law that you're going to be working in this summer. For example, I do a lot of immigration work, and the immigration law judges have created a bench book, and that's like my Bible. Whenever I'm going to turn in a motion or something a brief to the court, I always reference the rules and the format and the information that the judges have taken the time out to write a manual essentially for me to follow. And they'll tell you how they want the statute cited, how they want case law cited. Because the blue book is one thing, and I still have my blue book, as embarrassing as it might be, on my desk. But if I'm writing something for immigration court, I have to change that approach and fit what that specific court wants. Be creative, I would say. Also, you have more than just Westlaw and Lexis and Bloomberg. They're great tools, but there's also things outside of that realm, especially with new and novel issues. I would check out a blog written by an attorney that's really doing incredible stuff in that area of law. And I'm always constantly surprised that I know it's intimidating to say, like, I saw this blog that Claire wrote about,
Oh, I didn't write it.
but she, I saw this great blog that she wrote about this really impressive issue. I wonder if it's okay to send her an email to ask her a couple of questions. And you might feel like that's not okay, but what's the worst that could happen? They don't answer back. But I find more often than not they will. And they'll provide you with sample briefs or work that they've done, redacted motions, redacted orders. So if you have, if you're so inclined, I would recommend, reach out. And that's a way of being resourceful and creative that goes outside of traditional legal research.
Just for my personal edification, how many of you are 1Ls? That's a great thing to have. All right. Even if you don't have it locked in just yet, how many of you anticipating pursuing a clerkship? How many of you know what you actually do when you're a clerk? See, I told you I get the right question. Okay. My background before coming to law school was lobbying, which, depending on who you ask, were either Satan or were the greatest thing that the business has ever had. And one of the things that I feel like I learned that was really useful in lobbying that's carried over into doing this clerkship, I think should hold the same weight for you. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a clerk or if you're going to go into private practice to practice law or whatever, and that is to kind of have some sense of emotional intelligence about who it is that you're working for. And I think that goes back to the asking questions part that Tanishka was hitting on. You've got to get the law right, like Claire was talking about, and that's your primary job if you choose to be a clerk, okay? And if you ever want to go into private practice one day, even if you go into working with the government or anything like that as a staff attorney or something like that, the most important thing that you've got to be able to do is accurately state the law of the situation that applies to the problem you're dealing with and know how to deal with it in an efficient manner. So when you're a clerk, you're basically like the judge's calculator. You're the one that gets the first cut at the ball that gets pitched, and you want to try to hit a home run as many times as you can. When you do that, though, sometimes that's going to make you ask questions you're not going to necessarily know the answers to, and you're going to want to talk to your judge about them. Because, believe it or not, what you think, your judge may not necessarily agree with you on. And you have to be able to intelligently speak with him or her about, well, what's both sides of the issue here? If we go this way, why are we doing that? Why aren't we going this way? Well, if we go that way, why are we looking at it that way? And you need to be able to kind of give and take with your judge. And what do I mean by that? Well, say your judge takes a position and says, this is what we need to do. Okay. You need to challenge that. You need to say, well, what about this? Well, how are you going to explain that? What if we take it this way? What about this element and this part of this analysis that you didn't address the other day? That's how you both are working together in a way that helps you gel. And I think it gives you more credibility with your judge because you're not just nodding your head. They can go hire anybody out there and pay them whatever just to nod their head and agree with the judge. The judge doesn't want you to just agree with you and him or her. And it's the same way if you go into private practice. You need to be able to approach a question and tie that into the research component. When do you stop, right? And when you guys got your first memo in fall of your 1L year, I'm sure all of you are like, nope, nope. And you just keep clicking Westlaw, and it's like you're pulling a lottery waiting on it to come out. And it's like, nope, no case. Keep trying. Change that word. Nope. I'll put an and in there. Like, you need to go to the point to where all the questions that pop in your head go away. Okay? If you research an issue and you're out of questions that would make you a little concerned, or you can at least kind of hit a foul ball on it, you're in good shape, in my opinion. And your relationship with your judge is going to go a long way to your ability to help him or her as best you can. You've got to be able to have that kind of professional attitude and tone with them that puts you on the same plane as them. And working together in that way is only going to help you. Now, I wanted to kind of blend that into the bigger picture on the private side and how the lobbying kind of component comes into it. And that is just anticipating the needs of the people that you work for, okay? If you really want to set yourself above everybody else that you're working around, if any of you guys are going to go, are any of you working for larger firms this summer by chance? Okay, well, it's fine, even if you work at a small firm. I think the bigger question to ask is, are any of you going to be working somewhere where you think there's going to be more than one of you, as in there's going to be another 1L working that summer with you, right? Well, I mean, it's no different than y'all being in law school. I hope you all love each other in peace and harmony. Let's be honest, though, you're all in here knowing that you want to do as well as you can, right? And you can't get over the fact that there's a curve and everything. So you have to find ways to set yourself apart. Well, one way you can set yourself apart this summer is to not just do what the project is that your partner or whoever it is you're working, your judge, tells you to do. Anticipate why they're asking what they're asking you to do. Why is it that they're getting at that? What's the other things that we need to be thinking about with this? What are the other ways that we can tackle this? In the lobbying world, if you're trying to recruit a company to come to your state so that you can help economic development and all the big buzzwords you hear in the paper, oftentimes you want to put money on the table to try to get that company to come to your state. Well, a creative way that a lobbyist can help with that is you say, hey, have you ever thought about doing a tax break for a company? You give them a cut in their corporate tax rate, you give them to come to your state, you're in effect giving them $10 million without giving them $10 million, and it doesn't look so horrible in the paper because you're some gutless, spineless person recruiting a company to come to your state, right? Well, as a lawyer, you're kind of taking it from the same way. You're looking at the judge, and maybe you're tackling a procedural issue or something like that, and you're asking yourself, what are the different ways that we could approach dealing with this problem? Because I will tell you right now, and Claire can probably speak to this better than even I can, especially at the trial court, a lot of what you see are motions pre-trial before it actually gets to the stage with the jury or the judge, meaning the fact finder, where maybe someone wants to just dismiss the case. If you're in Virginia, you may make a demur. You may make a plea in bar. And you as the clerk are going to have to assess, based on what the lawyers have given you, does this pass muster to continue to get all the way to the jury? Have they given you enough work on paper to prove that they have a case that should reach a fact finder, right? I can tell you, unfortunately, the majority of the time, the attorneys that are arguing both sides of that can't even tell you in one sentence clearly what the issue they're upset about is. And you know whose job it is to tell to the judge what the issue really is? It's the same thing that you guys are doing here. And I think that it will be a tremendous boost to your self-confidence when you go out into the real world and you realize just how lackadaisical, unfortunately, a lot of lawyers tend to take their work. And it's going to be your job to make sure that you're the filter for your judge in bringing it up to the level that it should be so that the court addresses the issue the way it's supposed to be addressed. Because I can tell you right now, within my first week of work, I had a very basic question that I didn't quite know the answer to. If a lawyer is moving for something in pretrial, asking the judge to do something in layman's terms, that's what you're doing when you're asking for a motion. I want judge to do X for me. Say they're asking the court to do something that isn't in accordance with the law. They can't do that for whatever reason. Say it's the defense attorney that's challenging, right? Answering that. The defense attorney doesn't catch that, though. They just argue some kind of a bleak argument, right? What are you supposed to do? Defense attorney didn't argue the issue. Are you supposed to do his job for it? Or are you supposed to get the law right? I would argue you're supposed to. What I'm getting at is simply this. If one lawyer tells the court we need to do this when they're not allowed to do that because you're the clerk and you know that, and the other attorney doesn't spot that, you basically end up doing the work of the lawyers and the judge at the same time. And it puts a lot of work on the court. And it depends on what court you're going to be in, what kind of lawyers you're going to be dealing with. And all that goes back to anticipating the needs of the folks that you're working with. If you start seeing things like that, you want to do all that you can to basically put yourself in a position where when you come to work, your judge is just going to go, here, you know what to do with that. I don't even have to tell you anything. And how you get there is a lot harder than just simply knowing what the tools are out there. Yes, you've got Westlaw, yeah, you've got Lexis, yeah, you've got Bloomberg. It doesn't make anything in terms of difference if you don't know how to use them in a way that you can actually get the job done though. And if you pull up a case at $10 a clip, when you go into private practice, how about that for a thought? Every time that you guys click on a case in Westlaw in the real world costs $10. That's how important researching. Depends on where you're right. It depends on your pricing plan. That's right. Because I mean, like I'm at the court right now, we have a flat rate, so I can just it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. But unfortunately, depending on where you work, that may change. You know, so you want to be a little more circumspect about when you're clicking on stuff. So that's part of the reason that what you're doing here today really matters a lot. And I'm just kind of rambling on right here, but I mean, the point of the matter is just simply, I want you to be thinking about this practically. And not just thinking about this simply academically, because at the end of the day, wherever it is you work, it is business. And you need to be thinking about how can you do your job in such a way that you're doing the best you can, but at the same time keeping in mind that you want to do all you can to help the place you're working for be profitable and turning out work on an efficient and fast but thorough basis. And however you can help yourself get there, it's only going to help you in the long run.
One thing that Donovan was talking about that I think really bridges between no matter where you're going to be working, and this is going to be true when you're summering and when you're a young associate, like all of us. But at the core of what your job really is, I think, it's to make whoever you're working for look good. If you're working for a court, you're trying to make the judge look good, even if it means that you yourself look bad, because that's more important, that the judge comes across well and has respect. If you're working at a law firm or for a practitioner, you're trying to make sure that that lawyer is prepared, you're trying to anticipate his needs or her needs, and you sacrifice yourself for that. It's kind of paying your dues, and it's what happens, because their time is more valuable in a certain way than our time is. We can bring more in a different way. But no matter where you are, I think you need to just keep that in mind, because I think that's a place where some people, whether some are associates or when they're young lawyers, if you try to not get caught up in yourself or in ego. When you're writing, you're turning it in and it's getting torn apart, that's okay, and it's not personal. Because in the end, you're trying to make whoever it is that you're working for look good. And that's ultimately how you're going to do better in a twisted way. It'll make them like you more, and you'll do better in the long run. But it can be hard, because it's not always easy. It sometimes makes you feel bad. But the truth.
Well, and I think that to that point, wherever you guys go to work this summer, next year, wherever, don't reinvent the wheel, okay? You're going to have your writing get ripped apart pretty good. It's only going to make you better. But probably more important than anything, I would say, especially with writing, because it can be, the English language is a very just slippery thing. I mean, it's ambiguous by its very fact of being a language. And your ability to be able to write in such a way that you're surgical about everything that you say is going to be prized above all things. Looking at how the person that you work for writes is an invaluable use of your time, especially if you're working with a judge, obviously, because you're supposed to be echoing their voice. You're not supposed to be Donovan on behalf of Judge Ludwig. You're supposed to be Judge Ludwig, and Donovan's not even there. Okay? You're just kind of the invisible hand. It just happens.
Sometimes that's really bad. All the things I learned in law school, I'll say I unlearned in clerking, because my judges like passive voice, you know. It totally changed the way I write, not necessarily for the better, but it was good.
And my judge, to put a point on her, my judge loves to just, if it comes into his mind, he has to say it. If there's an issue, let me go over here. There's another one. What if that happens? We'll talk about that too. It's like the antithesis of everything that you were taught in law school. It's like, what are the facts here? There are 9,000 facts. We only care about 10. We'll talk about those 10. But what if somebody wants to read the other 8,990? Well, we should take that into account for them. So, you know, but what the point of the matter is simply that it's going to vary depending on who you're working for. Okay, and you need to be flexible and malleable, and you need to adjust yourself accordingly. Sometimes you need to speed up. Sometimes you have to slow down. Sometimes you have to write more. Sometimes you have to write less. Depends on who you work for. A couple of the judges, when I write for them, they say the more you write, the more it's like legal flypaper. Just making an excuse for the Court of Appeals to pull out a hammer on you. So they're just like, get in and get out as quickly as you can while hitting the points. Because as long as the car reaches the destination, I'm happy, you know. And they feel like that if there's a true issue, that's what the Court of Appeals exists for, is to correct those things. We're here at the trial court. We're here to move the docket. We're here to be efficient. We're here to process the cases. That's a jurisprudential theory or philosophy, okay? Other judges, one of the ones I work for, he's almost the opposite. It's almost like a game with him in the Court of Appeals. He is not going to let them reverse him at any cost. He is going to be absolutely perfect. So it just depends on who you work for.
Mm-hmm. And I would say along those lines of firms or legal aid, public interest organizations, government work, whatever you're doing, there's probably, it's probably been done at some point. Something like it has been done before. So you'll get sample motions or sample orders, and you'll get these documents. Make sure that you're not just cutting and pasting the information in, that you're going to, if they're going to cite to a statute, go ahead and go to that statute. Make sure that that citation is correct. Make sure that you're key citing this information or shepherdizing the information to make sure that it's still good law. All those things that you are learning are going to play in that way. So maybe you are getting a framework and you get a sample, a skeletal example of how you should be writing that motion or that brief. But still, don't fall back on someone else's legal research. Make sure that you're still actively engaged in it, so that, you know, if there are any changes, you're catching it, and then you're not putting that person that you're turning this work into in a bad position in front of the judge or in front of the clerks.
We're talking a lot. You guys need to ask questions.
How do you like practicing in Richmond?
I actually like it. I'm from the north, so it's like a different country in a way. No, I'm just kidding. But it's really nice. I like that it's a kind of smaller city. When I was clerking, I was in Pittsburgh for 1 year, which is where I grew up, and then I was in Charleston, West Virginia last year, and we would go to Richmond for court week. But all three of those cities, it's just I like it because it's kind of a smaller city. It's manageable. Lawyers have to, your word is going to follow you, so there's kind of a level of professionalism that you have to maintain. It's a small enough legal world that people get to know each other. I like Richmond a lot for many reasons, but yeah. Is that where, are you planning to?
It's not where my summer job is, but.
Yeah, I highly recommend it.
Do you like plan on staying in Richmond, or like I know your firm's all around the country. Like how
Well,
easy is it to go from firm to firm?
You mean from office to office?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually one of the reasons I picked McGuire Woods, is because they have an office in Richmond and then also in Pittsburgh, and so I could work remotely. I think with most big firms, the technology and stuff is good enough that you can, if you're in one office, you can work from home or work from another office pretty easily. It's like you're not even, nobody even knows if you're there or not, because everything is, can be set up and phones forwarded and all that. So, yeah, I like that a lot.
For Ms. Cruz, how is it like working with the immigration courts? Maybe that's too broad, but
No,
what
it's
have
great.
been your experiences? Because my summer internship was working specifically with the special juvenile status in Baltimore. So I was
Great.
wondering what's the experience?
So my experience is that, like with most courts, every immigration court is different. And every immigration judge within that court is different. So oftentimes you just have to do your homework and become friends. I'm so proud of myself because I'm good friends with the judge that I deal the most with, legal assistant. And that is key. Because if I need something, or if, my motion to continue hasn't been granted, and we have court on Thursday at 2 p.m. There's a lot, because in every state there's typically just one immigration court. So for the entire state of Virginia, our one immigration court is in Arlington. So it's going to take a lot of resources for me to get up there and for the clients to all get up there. So it's important for me to know what's going on, what's the status of this motion. So me being able to call her or shoot her an email and having a very cordial, professional relationship with her makes things a lot easier, because she'll say, oh, let me go grab it and let me get it granted for you right now. So that's really making those connections with not just the judge, but also the staff that supports the judge is huge, and can get you pretty far. It's a busy experience. Like once you go to immigration court for the first time, it kind of blows you away the way that it's all structured. But again, it's become familiar with the immigration bench book. It's the judge's book that's going to be huge. I find that the practice, if you go into court really well prepared, I think anybody would agree. It's, anticipating what, not just what your arguments are, but what's the counter argument going to be. And then what are you going to say to try to defeat that counter argument? So not just looking at things from your perspective, but also from opposing counsel's perspective. But it's really great work. And the one thing about special immigrant juvenile status, it's projects are sprouting up all over the country, and there are listservs that the bar associations and pro bono organizations have set up, if you can get signed up for as many of those listservs as possible. And I would say that that goes for a lot of different practice areas. There's, you know, different immigration or different professional organizations specific to your area of interest, and they typically have these ongoing conversations on listservs with issues that are, you know, specific to that area of law. And they're discussing it. And I just have a folder in my Outlook that all of these listserv, you know, questions and conversation chains go into. Because in 6 months, when the issue about aging out in Virginia for a special immigrant juvenile comes up that's specific to, you know, how many months do I have to file this in this specific jurisdiction, I can just run a search in my email box that can get me there to what that, you know, attorney who had experience in that jurisdiction did. So just being organized and getting into the conversation will help. But good luck. It's really good work.
Something that I thought about with you mentioning that, especially about the organizing, just the research and things that you get on the listservs and things. Something that, because most of you guys are 1Ls, I realize that I imagine a lot of your life has been like, here's a class, I read for this class, here's a class, I read for this class. I survive one day at a time. I totally get that. We all do. This is, I talk about big picture stuff because I like to remind you guys there is a life outside of this bubble that is law school. And one of the things that I think all of you guys need to keep in mind as you are here in school and you're thinking about how to use your time, what classes you want to take, what extracurriculars you want to participate in, is simply that everything that Claire and Tanisha and I are telling you about, the one thing that we do every single day is we have to research and we have to write. Okay? You guys have to write some writing project once a semester, maybe. I may write what you write in that semester 6 times in that week, you know. But that's all I have to do, though. It's not like I have all this other static of different classes that you guys are preparing for. You're kind of like building a ship while you're sailing at the same time right now. And I get that. But all I'm simply saying is this. You need to take the classes that are going to get you ready for the bar exam. You know, you need to take the classes you're interested in as best you can. But do not shrift the importance of stressing how to do legal research better than everybody else as much as you can. And to give yourself every opportunity to learn how to write while you're here. It's just like moot court. The main reason I wanted to do moot court was because I thought to myself that if I screwed up as many times as humanly possible when I was in the 4 walls of this building, I could work as much of that out of my system as I could and learn from it here and have people around me that will hug me and tell me I will do better next time, then go out in the real world and cost my client $5,000 for screwing up something. Okay? So we're all perfectionists because we're all at Washington Lee Law School. Okay? But mess up. Give yourself opportunities to screw up and move on. That's life. And doing the research and the writing while you're here, it all goes together. The more you read, the better you write. The more you write, the better you read. The more you research, the more the words will come to you as to what you need to speak in your writing. So do what you can to give yourselves those opportunities to develop those skills, because that's what they are. They're skills. They're not a toolbox. That's what you guys have right now, and I will be willing to submit to where you are. It's like we've handed you a huge toolbox. And I give you a beat-up Ford pickup truck, and I'm like, here you go, have at it. And y'all are like, I don't know what to do with that. That's what lawyers do day in, day out, though. We give you all the tools you have, but the ones that figure out how to fix this problem in the most efficient way possible for the lowest amount of money and turn out the most work, those are the ones that do well. And you don't have to kill yourself if you're willing to learn out how to life hack it in a way, more or less, just to put a fine point on it. So with all that being said, when you guys research topics in school, start making a personal folder, because you're going to carry that with you for the rest of your life probably. And you're going to see that issue again, most likely. Okay? I can't tell you the number of times I've just, out of curiosity, I see something pop up in the courtroom, and I've still got an outline that I did from a class when I was here, just to jar my memory about what the topic was, and then I dive into the secondary and kind of tease that a little bit more. Happens all the time. And all these memos that I do for judges, don't think I'm not stashing them in a file for myself later on too. Great example of what just happened this week, and also just kind of anticipating needs like I was telling you guys about. I had done a memo on appointing alternate jurors in a trial a couple weeks back. Why? I didn't have anything to do that day. It was a Friday. Everybody kind of mellowed out and left to go to the mountains or run away from court because we didn't have anything in work in court that day. And I knew that we had a really big murder trial coming up. That was just this past week. And we had to appoint 2 alternate jurors. So you've got a number of people that sit in the jury, and then we added 2 more. Didn't tell them they were alternates, just in the event that if something were to happen to somebody, we don't have to declare a mistrial and totally do the thing over again. Well, here's the thing, what happened. You go through this whole trial, the jury sat in on the whole thing, and both sides are like, you know, these jurors have been so attentive. I would just feel awful to tell them after sitting through this entire trial that you two, you are participating. Thank you so much for your service to the city of Stanton. You can go home and have a great weekend. They wanted to waive excusing them and just allow them to participate. And then when it comes out, you know, let the actual jury, not the alternates, but whatever the jury is, to announce what the verdict was. That was going to be allowed because both sides waived it, right? If there was any problem, they'd argue, well, guess what? That is a fatal, reversible error without objection in case law. It's not in our code in bright lights, but if the court fails to excuse the alternate jurors before you send the jury back to deliberate, even if both sides are like it's totally fine, or the judge is like, I want to give these guys a chance to participate, by God, they've been here this whole week sacrificing their time to be here, you can have to totally do that trial over again. Because just by them being in that room and looking at the jurors, the facial expressions they provide as an alternate, like, you know, they don't have to say anything, but as a juror, you're being like, why does that guy think what I was just saying? So that could influence their decision. And you can impinge on someone's constitutional rights. I'm keeping that memo for the rest of my life, probably. Because if I have a trial come up down the road, the last thing I want to do is get a verdict for my client and then find out that after I was trying to be gracious to the jury that I actually reversed myself without my own doing, you know. So keep up with your stuff. Find a system that works for you. It's the same way when you guys are taking notes on cases and stuff like that. Some of you guys are highlighter fiends, I'm sure. Some of you like to use pens. Figure out what works for you and store that away some way that you can find it and use it again later on. You can use it throughout the rest of your career.
I still use some outlines for some issues that will pop up, like my con law outline. Like I just recently had somebody pop in the office and ask me a question about whether divorce is a right. Like, do you have a right to divorce? And she said, I thought in law school, in con law, there was a case about, having a right to divorce. I can't put my finger on the case. So I'm looking through I pull it up my outline, I'm looking through it, and I find, ultimately, no, there's not, an exact right to a divorce. There's, but not having the right to a divorce can impede your right to marriage, which is a substantive right. So, having that and being able to produce that relatively quickly with stuff that you just kind of, think, poured over time. I have outlines and articles, and you find a system, you save it, and you think, I'm never going to use this again, but it's just so easy now on a computer to run a search across your files, to look through things, that it's worthwhile to keep them stored somewhere in an organized way.
So while I was here, I've been hearing a lot of the advantages of doing a clerkship after graduation. If we're toying with the idea of going to a firm after graduation and clerking, are there any disadvantages of clerking first before going to a firm, other than maybe a salary cut?
I don't think so. I think if you have an offer at if you have an offer for a firm job, If it's like a medium to large firm, most likely they'll keep the offer open for you, so you'll still have your job after clerking. I think for me, I remember Professor Murchison said like he's never met anybody that's regretted a clerkship. That's been definitely true in my experience. I think a lot of it, the clerkships, like depending on where you're clerking, it's very different. I did district court or like a trial court and then appeals, and they were both fantastic. If I could only do one, I think trial court is a lot more valuable in terms of later, unless you're planning on being an academic. Trial court teaches you so much stuff that you never thought about in law school. I think that's probably it could be incredibly valuable. It's, to me, it's probably comparable to doing, like people graduate from medical school and they go do a residency and you're getting some actual, experience implementing what you've learned. I think clerking is similar to that. And it's fun. Like it's just really, really, it's really cool. So I would definitely say do it. And I don't know of any disadvantages, only advantages.
I would agree 100%. And don't underestimate, this is going to sound inherently biased, don't underestimate the value of state clerkships as well, okay? If you're going for the sheer glitz factor, then by all means, stress yourself out over a federal clerkship. And if you can land one, more power to you. They're absolutely invaluable. It's got, I know what I'm talking about, written all over your resume. Because if a judge was willing to hire you, you better believe that the law firm knows that you've got some sense and you've got good judgment and you know how to work very well. You're basically like the skunk works for the judge. You know how they think. You know what they get upset about. You know what they like to see from lawyers. You know what they don't like to see. You know what kinds of idiosyncrasies they have. So, say for instance, in case you can't tell, I am from Georgia. So I have every desire to go back to Georgia. I will be going back to Georgia. If I were to have had the opportunity to clerk for a Georgia judge, I would have certainly had taken it. I'm married, my wife's in Charlottesville, so it's the only reason I didn't do it right away. But the reason why I would want to do that is because you get to then turn around and then work in front of that judge. So the firm that is doing a lot of work in front of that judge may want to have you on their team because they know you know what he or she wants, And with the federal system, I think that you just, the firepower mentally of the lawyers that you see week in, week out is totally, you can't match it anywhere else. So at the trial courts, I would say the difference would be you see more of the strategy and the tactical decisions that go into actually getting a case to trial and moving into trial itself. You see a ton of trials. Even if you don't ever become a litigator, just the stories you can take from that to tell clients later, you do not want to be in this situation, trust me. That's valuable to you. On the appellate side, you learn the law as good as anybody because all you're doing is dealing with the legal questions. But I will tell you though, from the trial side though, it's a lot more driven by just being a master of civil and criminal procedure. You have to know how to abide by all the rules to get the process to move through the system. And the last thing you want to do is have an excellent case go out on some silly procedural rule you just let slip by you. And it happens all the time. But being that clerk gives you a year, just like Claire said, to kind of have like a 1-year residency in being a lawyer, basically. In my mind, it's the way it should be. Because you're basically an apprentice to someone charged with creating the law of the jurisdiction you're in many ways.
And if you work for depending on the judge, usually, they're judges, they're going to have been really good lawyers, and they're going to, I think most judges enjoy the relationship, and so you learn a lot from just your judge about what they did as a lawyer in order to succeed, and that can be really good.
And I'm sorry, one last thing I was going to say is if you wanted to go to a far-flung jurisdiction, you're in Virginia, say you wanted to practice in California, kind of a hard place to break in, right? Unless you know someone there already. if you're clerking with that judge for a year or two, you're constantly making relationships with lawyers. You see the best ones, you see the worst ones. So you get to make the judgment call for yourself. Is this the kind of person that I want to work with? Is that the kind of person I want to be associating my professional credibility to? And that makes you make a better decision. And you get to actually forge a genuine relationship with someone to land a job versus we all know why I'm here. Can I talk to you about possibilities for the future? You see what I'm saying? It just has more of the credibility you want.
No, it's fine. I just want to put a little plug out there also for public interest and legal aid organizations, because it's a unique sort of situation. It's a all hands on deck. So if what you're looking, I think, to get is, you know, a tremendous amount of experience in doing a lot of legal research, if you volunteer at one of these places, I know it's not glamorous, and you know, it's tough work, especially when you're already very busy. But if there's one thing we rely heavily on our legal interns for, and law students that participate, you know, in our program through clinics, is legal research. I mean, like, you know, I have a caseload of 100, you know, plus cases. So when I get a call, let's say, from, you know, a concerned teacher somewhere in Virginia who's saying that the police officer that's stationed at their school is doing something that is perhaps, you know, counter to the student's constitutional rights, I don't in that moment have a lot of time to dig deep into that issue. But if I can quickly put together an email with a fact summary, and here are the really interesting, you know, legal questions of this specific case, and I can shoot that over to a law student that I trust, that I know will get me that, an informal, quick and dirty, what is going on with this issue, it's invaluable to me, because I already have my, you know, my to-do list. It's just always, I had to like resign myself to like embrace the fact that I'm just going to have an endless to-do list at this point, and I just have to prioritize and reprioritize constantly. But if I have a couple of interns that I can turn to and say, hey, look, this just came up and I need to know, you know, do we have a case? Who's this case against? And where are we bringing this case? And I can rely on them to get me information that I can, you know, hang my hat on and then take it up even further. It's just invaluable work. And we're always looking. So if you're so inclined, you know, reach out.
No one else's question. I'm going to jump in. So one of the segments, and it was one that I presented today, was about current awareness and news. And so I'm curious if any of you can speak to what the sources you follow. I know potentially you were the one who mentioned blogs earlier, and I think someone mentioned listservs, things like that. But other resources, either things on the web or in print, newspaper. I'm just curious. A survey in various jurisdictions you've worked in, you know, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Virginia, you know, what is it that, and also practice area oriented, what kind of things do you follow, and types of things do you do to stay abreast in your fields?
I think, so right now, so I'm in IP litigation, and Law 360 like sends me an email whenever there's some development, and I just read the headlines, and that seems to work. So far, so good. I don't know. That's just what I'm going to stick with. When I was clerking, I would follow a Pennsylvania blog, and then for when I was doing appeals, I would follow How Appealing and SCOTUS blog. Mostly I think you just need to find blogs that are good and that are someone's actually like spending a lot of time doing it, so that you can trust that if there's something out there that's come up, that they're going to tell you about it. That's the hard thing, you know, like, because you want to be able to rely on somebody to tell you what you need to know, but everybody's busy, so how do you know if they're doing that? So I can say How Appealing and SCOTUS blog are great. I don't know about others, but I'm sure there's good ones.
I recommend Google Alerts also. I'm constantly creating them when new issues or new, you know, if we're doing something related to impact legislation and there's something, you know, we're trying to get passed, then I'm going to type up sort of a query that's going to meet that specific current need that we have in the office. If I'm working on, like I have one set up for the various different cases and issues I'm working on, just so that if there's a news source, especially with, you know, these new issues, if you just want to stay on top of anything that's coming out, I think, the Google alerts work well. You just have to remember. The trick is remembering how to update them and keeping up. Also, there's something called the Skim. I don't know if there's a lot of people who subscribe to that. I love it. You get it every morning at like 7 a.m. and it really just is a quick breakdown of like if someone at work is talking about this is what you need to know about it, and this is what you maybe want to say. So it just keeps you in the know, because I honestly just don't have a lot of time to read like everything that's going on. So if I could just get a quick summary of things that'll make me sort of know what happened yesterday, what was everybody talking about yesterday, what do I need to know or be prepared to discuss today. And podcasts I'm a big fan of, because I can just drive to work for half an hour and just get the lowdown on whatever's going on in my area of interest.
All right, Mike, I'm taking my payment after class. DNA law reports. Honest to God, most authoritative breakdown of the law like that you're going to find in terms of turnaround. U.S. Lawyers Weekly. You guys heard of that? Once, twice, 13 times?
They heard about it today.
Okay. U.S. Lawyers Weekly, if you don't have a notification already set up to get that at least once a week, go ahead and do it. They'll just give you a quick one-blip headline categorized by what area of the law it is. You go through the ones you like, skim over the ones you don't really concern yourself too much with. Absolutely the best thing out there. Courts used to routinely cite them in opinions on stuff that's at the cusp of being a big deal or has become a big deal. And another thing that I find extremely useful that Bloomberg has as well is you can actually get some of the larger firms, particularly, they actually have their firm memos that they publish on emerging issues. I'm very interested in where the law and business kind of hit a nexus. So if the law is going a certain way that impacts on a business growth, that's something that those memos are very useful for. So like you may have, for instance, McGuire Woods representing Dominion Power because Atlantic Coast Pipeline wants to put a 550-mile natural gas pipeline through the 5 states or something like that, because they are. You may see them publish a memo analyzing the constitutional questions of whether this amounts to a search and, or like a seizure of property or something like that, or is this an eminent domain kind of concern, or when does that get triggered? They'll kind of head it off with that memo, and they'll publish it out there to the general legal community as kind of like a way of telling all the other people that may have relationships with different firms. You may be using them to do your, utility work or whatever, but we're kind of the ones that know what we're talking about here. And here's a great example why. And you may have them say, you know what, McGuire Woods knows what they're talking about with that. Maybe we should go talk to them. So, point of the matter is simply that those, specifically the BNA law reports especially, they tend to tackle the issues like circuit splits, where people really are kind of all over the place, and they'll break down the issues side by side for you and maybe take a foreshadowing or, a guess at like, where are we going to go in the next 5-10 years. And that can be really useful to you in law school, even if you're just looking for a random competition to write a paper for or something like that, just to get something published. They tend to kind of spot the areas of law that are really big right now, that have a lot of unsettling kind of features to it. So if you're going to write something, might as well write something that's going to get a lot of headway in terms of people see the use in having it there, right? So just keep that in mind when you guys get to that stage of your law school time, in terms of like trying to get published, making law review, deciding what you want your note to be, something like that. Go find lawyers in the community or the firms you're interested in and tell them, hey, I know you do a lot of work in this sector. I'm very interested in it. I'd like to write a note on this topic. Can I talk to you about some of the problems that you guys have ran into? It's a great excuse to network with someone that you would like to maybe work for one day. And if you can say, I also went up on, Bloomberg or wherever, and I've seen the law firm memo that you guys published a week ago about this topic. I mean, it's going to make you look very, very sophisticated and having that forward thinking that they're looking out of the folks that they want to come and work for them one day.
clerks, do y'all track opinions that have gone up to appellate courts to see where y'all have perhaps messed up on your particular?
That's never happened. You don't, at least in the federal, like you get docket updates, like, so you wouldn't need to follow it through an outside source. Like if it's being appealed or if it comes back down or something like that, you'll know just from your own docket, the court's system. But you can on Westlaw set up searches. Sometimes I would follow cases, like if the Supreme Court was going to take up an issue, you follow it, you can like flag it, and it will email you when there's more updates on that. So I've done that. But in terms of your own case, if you are going to maybe be reversed, which I don't know anything about, but I'm just kidding. But you wouldn't need to do that. Maybe I don't know how it works in the state.
I mean, we get a notice of appeal card when they say that we're going to take this up to the next level because we disagree with you for 1, 2, or 3. And we may keep an eye on it, but I'm not concerned, to be honest with you. But it's something that you can certainly track. And I think Claire's point, something else is a really good thing to do. If you use Westlaw, you know the little bell icon you see in the bar? I've actually got a search that runs every morning for mine that collects all of the Virginia-based news sources. That it basically produces a publication report every day. So I will get an email each day of all the news stories that were published in all the Virginia organs to my email, and I can just skim what all the papers hit that day if it piques my curiosity. Virginia Lawyers Weekly, am I getting that right? That's the Virginia kind of legal community organ that you want to look to just to see like what are the really interesting cases that are maybe piping up here and there. The Georgia, we have the Daily Report. Those are kind of more of the quasi-authoritative two types of places you want to be looking for kind of a breakdown of the issue rather than Joe Blow that loves to get home after work with a beer and talk about what case happened yesterday or something. You tend to get a little bit more of a sophisticated analysis of the issues that are happening in your local legal community that you'll want to keep an eye on.
Wonderful. Well, it's a little bit past 1 o'clock. Thank you so much to our panelists. I don't think there are any more questions. If there are, maybe they can hang around and kind of offline chat for a little bit. But yeah, join me in giving them a big hand. That's a lot of great information, and I really appreciate it. I know I learned a lot. So I wanted to give you guys something too because this is all coming straight from the WNO. This is from the WNO store, bookstore. So a little something for each. They didn't have 3 of any one thing, so it's. I don't know. You guys can trade or swap tomorrow. But I want to say thanks again to you guys, and you're welcome to. I mean, there are a couple of housekeeping things I want to do here. Real quick, you can sit there. You can go get some lunch, do whatever. But I did really quickly want to show you guys how now it's at 1 o'clock, so the test is now available up on Twin. And I wanted to show you that at the bottom of your agenda, it has little details about the password and success to log in there. So I'm going to go to all right, so I'm just going to run this through. So if you want to log in Twin, now the test is going to be available until 8 o'clock p.m. On Monday, the 28th. So you have a couple days to do it. I recommend just doing it now when everything's fresh in your mind. If you are going to take it, it is optional. Of course, if you do pass and it's not that hard of a bar to pass, then you'll be entitled to take the to get a legal research certificate and put it on your resume. In order to do it, if anyone's following along right now, or just remember for your own, if you want to do it on your own later on. Click Add a Course here. I already have it added in mine, so it won't do anything. But in this list here, you're going to look for Spring into Summer Success. It's alphabetical list, so I guess it would be about in this area right here. It's going to be Spring into Summer Success, and then in the password space right here, just type Success, all lowercase. And then again, that's at the bottom of your agenda. There's that little important blurb that's in red. And you enter that in there, and then it's going to add the course. And then once you're in the course, it looks like this. And you click on this red link here or on assignments and quizzes here, it should take you to the same page. And then you'll see 4 different quizzes. Take the one that corresponds to the breakout session that you attended. So here's the free and low cost, legislative agency, transactional, and Virginia materials. They're substantively the same except for about 5 or 6 questions that pertain to that breakout that you did. Again, it's 35 questions total. There were 2 points each, and partial credit is allotted. So 70 points total, and a score of 50 or higher will entitle you to get to the certificate. It should take anywhere from, I'm going to approximate a half hour to an hour to do. So I would strongly suggest you do it. It'll reinforce a lot of things you heard from the panelists, from us, the presenters today, and it will get you in the right frame of mind to be thinking about some things for summer. So again, if you have any questions about that or difficulty accessing it, just let me know, or just shoot one of us an email on the library reference team. Okay, now last but not least, as you know, there's a drawing, $100 gift certificate, courtesy yet again of Bloomberg Law. I see it's in Mike's hot little hand over there. I'm going to go. This is another cool resource that is not particularly legally related, but something that might come in handy from time to time is random.org. Kind of funny URL. I guess they claimed that pretty early on in the internet process. But anyway, they have a generator here, a random number generator. So it's very cool. I'm just giving it to the gods of technology to calculate who our winner is going to be. Did everyone sign in on the sign-in sheet? Okay. So basically, the number between 1 and 23. I'm going to put it in here, minimum 1, max 23. And there's a few people who didn't attend around here, so if it goes to 1, or if somebody exited the room, they're not here, they can't get it, and I'll run it again, which did happen last year, so just be aware. Let's see, 23. Hit generate, and then here it goes. Somebody lucky is going to get number 10. That is Corey Lipschitz. Corey gets $100. Courtesy of Bloomberg Bank. Of course, I just want to say thanks again to all you guys for coming in on the Saturday, Saturday morning. Hopefully it was worth it. I think, I had a good time. I really enjoyed it. Seeing a lot of you guys that I didn't have in class personally, and working with you. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, please do come see myself, Ms. Miller, Mr. Eller. Professor Mark Rice couldn't be here today, but she's always welcome. She always welcomes people down in her office on the first floor. Stop by. We're always happy to answer questions and get you ready for anything you're going to be facing this summer. So with that said, have a great rest of your weekend, and thanks again for coming.